everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Danielle from Pro World, and I'm here with Jimmy Lamb from Sawgrass. He will be leading our webinar today. He's done a few of them in the past, so they're all very, successful and informative. So I hope you all enjoy, and I will pass this right over to Jimmy so he can get started.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. Great to be here. Today we're going to be talking about how to start a sublimation business. And that's a big topic if you want to know the truth. I mean, if we had 8 hours, we could sit here and talk about every little detail of starting a small business, but we don't. So what we're really going to focus on is just kind of the things that you need to know about sublimation, okay? Talking about things like equipment and graphics options and some of those types of things, okay? And the idea, again, is to get you with the information of how sublimation works, what you can do with it, and what it takes to bring it into either an existing business or maybe build a business from scratch around sublimation. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that we can go with that. So today's topic is how to start a sublimation business. My name is Jimmy Lamb, and I happen to be the manager of education for Sawgrass, and also a guy that's done a lot of product decorating over his career. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So sublimation, okay, I was trying to think of a really good word to kind of sum up sublimation, what it can do for you as a business. And diversity really became the word because it's so diverse, all the different things that we can do with sublimation. So if you look at this particular picture here on the screen, everything in there has been sublimated, every one of those items, sublimated basically with the same system. The main difference is the heat press that was used, because to do something rounded like the water bottle, you obviously cannot use a flat heat press, or if you do, it's not going to work very well. But other than that, everything was done with the same printer, a desktop style printer, so nothing that's huge and takes up half of a room. Was able to produce all these different things. Now, paying attention here, you see we have some apparel, we have the socks, we have flip-flops, then we have some hard products over here, like some award products, and of course the water bottle and the frames. Just a very small tip of the iceberg of what we can do with sublimation, because there's literally close to 1,000 different types of blanks available for sublimation. So this is one of the few systems that will do such a wide range of products. Now, I got my start as an embroiderer, and what can we do with embroidery? We can do apparel, okay? We can do soft goods, and that's about it. The realization while growing that business is that being able to go into an area where we can do digital printing on a wide range of products was absolutely huge for being able to grow the business. And the startup costs were actually a lot lower for being able to add in sublimation versus the equipment I already had invested. So that's a big positive, because we're able to get into this for a very low cost, yet produce a tremendous range of things. And if we set it up the right way, we can get some really good margins out of a lot of things that we produce with sublimation. Now, I know some of you are already in business doing something or the other, and in this particular picture, again, showing you what sublimation can do for you as an add-on, okay, as an add-on. Now, let's think about this customer. This customer is the Warriors. If you happen to be an embroiderer, basically all you could do right now is this one item in the very back. If you were a screen printer or maybe direct-to-garment printing with white ink, you could do the t-shirt here, but you couldn't do all the other things. But guess what? This customer is buying all these other things, and if you cannot produce all those other things, they're going to go somewhere else to get those other things. Now, they may still buy the embroidery or the screen printing or whatnot from you, but the reality is they're going somewhere else and spending some of their money. Okay, and we'd like to actually have that in our shop, not in someone else's shop. Now, the danger, though, is when they go somewhere else to get some of these other products and find out that other shop can also do what it is that you do, because then they may not have a need to come back. So if you're already in business doing some form of decoration, because a lot of you are doing transfers, okay, being able to add sublimation just broadens what you can give to each existing customer. Now, that's very important. If you look at what it takes to get a new customer versus an existing customer, taking care of them is actually easier than going out and beating the bushes for new clients. According to the Ad Specialty Institute, it takes approximately 6 times more energy effort and money to recruit a new customer as it does to service an existing customer. So here's something I want you to think about. All of you that are already in business doing something, you have a customer base. If you're able to go back to that customer base and suddenly offer them all these other products, that's pretty easy to do. Doesn't take a lot of effort or a lot of cost to do that, but suddenly you're actually able to generate more revenue from your existing client base. And then when you start expanding your client base because of all your new products and services, it just gets that much more revenue coming in the door. So these are just some of the great things that Sublimation can do for you if you start a sublimation business or add sublimation to an existing business. Okay, so what exactly is sublimation? Sublimation is a digital printing process, and it works at a molecular level. Okay, now that sounds like it's a sci-fi kind of thing, but the reality is this: when we do digital printing and apply inks to something, inks have to bond with the surface, just like paint has to bond with the surface. If you ever think about paint, you have different paints for different surfaces. Okay, so always got to think about that bonding. How do we bond the image ink to the product? That's important, because if we don't bond it well, it's going to do what? It's going to crack, peel, come off, fade, all those kind of things. So when we start looking at processes like screen printing, direct-to-garment printing, and many other forms of inkjet printing, it's important that we add something called a binder to make the ink bond to the surface of what we're decorating. Now, many times that binder is applied to the ink itself. In other cases, especially with digital transfers, the binder may actually be in the paper itself. And that's one of the reasons with some of the inkjet transfers that you can use OEM ink, and that's the ink that's actually in your printer, and then apply it to something like a t-shirt, because if you use the right transfer paper, then you're able to get that chemical additive there that's going to help that ink bond to the surface. Okay, now all those types of processes, bonding to the surface, and anything that bonds to the surface, whether it's a hard product or a soft product, is susceptible to damage very easily. Okay, if you put something on a hard surface, many inks, you can take your thumbnail and scratch them, and it starts to just scratch the ink off. Okay, in the case of apparel, what we see is typically when we wash the products that we have cracking and peeling and fading over time, and that's because the binder is breaking loose. All right. Well, with sublimation, we don't use any binders at all, because sublimation uses a molecular bonding process. Now, because of that, sublimation only bonds with one type of material, and that happens to be polymers and polyesters. That's it. Okay, but no binder is required. So what you get is a very permanent bond because of the molecular interaction between the sublimation dye and the actual product that we're putting it onto. Now, sublimation is a dye, and dyes are different from inks, but the reality, for our purposes of discussion, we're just going to call it all ink and keep it simple. Now, the case of sublimation is we're going to load our sublimation dye into a printer that is capable of processing the sublimation dye. And we're going to print onto special transfer paper designed specifically for sublimation. We're going to take that item, we're going to put it in a heat press, the item we want to decorate. We're going to lay that sublimation paper on top of it. We're going to close them up in a heat press. Most items 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 minute with a medium pressure. Two very unique things happen. Number one, that sublimation dye turns into a gas. Number two, the polymers are really composed of microcells, and a nice descriptive way of putting it is envision the microcell being like a little clamshell that opens, and when it opens, that sublimation gas penetrates into it, and because of that is penetrating into it, bonding at a molecular level. When we open the heat press and pull the item out and it cools down, that ink is encapsulated within the surface rather than on the surface, and that paper is peeled off and thrown away. The paper is temporary. Okay, please keep that in mind. Transfer paper for sublimation is temporary. We peel it off, throw it away. We do it while it's hot too. Okay, it is a hot peel process. Okay, because it's bonded into the surface, we have something that won't crack or peel, and in the case of soft goods, apparel, it will not fade when washed. Okay, that's pretty impressive stuff. So that is what sublimation is all about. Now, one question here is, why can't you use cotton shirts? Because sublimation will not bond with cotton. It requires molecular bonding, and it only works with polymers and polyesters. Does not work with cotton. Okay. Now, When you look at something like a blend, a poly cotton shirt, yes, you can sublimate a poly cotton shirt. The sublimation will bond with the polyester, but not with the cotton. Now, the end result would be, if you're doing a poly cotton shirt, is that the image typically looks faded because of the fact that it's only bonding with part of the fibers, not all of the fibers. If you don't want a faded image, it's a bad way to go. But that faded image can really work very good for special effects. I like to use that kind of special effects a lot of times working with the surf industry. When I'm working with t-shirts for surfers and they're looking for that retro look, and when the retro look is in, it's in. This is a great way to get that retro look. So I like that concept of being able to get that type of look with sublimation. Another question, is there special ink needed for cotton? Yes, you have to use different type of ink for cotton. You would be using typically a pigment ink. You know, pigment inks typically fade as well. Sublimation does not fade. But pigment inks are typically what you're going to be used for cotton. Now, you can buy and set up, you can buy transfer systems that will allow you to do cotton shirts. If you work with direct-to-garment printing, direct-to-garment printers use pigment inks. Those inks do not bond to polyester. They only bond to cotton. Okay, so you don't have one ink that works for everything. What you have is you have different inks that work for different things. So you have to understand what it is you want to decorate, and then you have to choose the right ink or right application to make all that work. All right, so let's move on and talk a little bit more about all this. And I mentioned that the sublimation only bonds with polymers and polyesters, which sounds quite limiting, okay, because we already got some questions about cotton. But the reality is that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of products, close to 1,000 different blank products available that do have a polymer coating applied to them. There are metal products, there's ceramics, there's glass, there's acrylic, there's wood, there's hard plastics, there's even some stone products. Now, if you pick up one of these for the first time, you've never touched it before, let's say like the metal flask that you see over here, does it have a rubbery plastic feel because of the polymer coating? The answer is no. You feel the metal, okay? So when you're touching it, you feel metal. If you touch ceramic like the food bowl here, you feel the ceramic. You're not feeling any type of polymer coating. So the reality is it doesn't seem like it's there, but it's actually there, okay? And that's what the sublimation needs to be able to bond to it. Now, some things are actually made of polyester, and they don't have any kind of coating at all because they are already a polymer-based item or polyester-based item, and we can sublimate directly to that. Just a small sampling of some of the different products out there and the wide range of different products out there available for sublimation. Now, another neat thing about sublimation is it's an HD high definition ink. Sublimation can do such high level photography that many professional photographers use it for things such as wedding portraits. Now, a lot of you aren't thinking about doing wedding portraits. I understand that. The reality, though, is being able to put a picture onto something increases the perceived value. Pictures tell stories. They explain things. They become visual cues that catch people's attention. So the ability to actually put in a high-def photo, even on something like a promotional product or an award product, for example, goes a long way towards raising the perceived value, which can give you better margins without additional cost added to it. And I've been mentioning the apparel. I think we covered a lot of it there, but I will mention a couple extra things. Polyester at one time was not the favorite fabric of choice for people, okay, and basically had a bad reputation. Over the years, a lot of changes have been made, and we're seeing that the polyester products are some of the top products now, especially in the sports world, with the development of the poly performance products. Because with the poly performance, what you have is polyester that has moisture wicking capabilities. Now, some people talk about it breathing. No, it doesn't breathe, but moisture wicking means it draws moisture away from your skin. During the summer, it's an evaporative effect, which has sort of a cooling effect. In the winter, it keeps you from being cold and clammy. So it's become very popular due to companies like Under Armour, who really got it out there in the mainstream, and then Nike, who's picked it up and whatnot. So most of the products that we're doing with sublimation are poly performance, meaning it has the moisture wicking capabilities with it. Okay, and it's available in a wide range of different products. Now, for those who don't like the traditional look and feel of polyester, which typically is sort of the slick, shiny type of material, very stretchy, there is what's called spun polyester, which looks and feels like cotton. So when you put your hands on it, most people think it's cotton when they touch it, but it's still polyester, and therefore it sublimates quite well. Okay, so that's just one other thing to think of. We're seeing more and more products come out. Not just t-shirts, but we're seeing, headwear, we're seeing different types of outerwear. The sleeves are very popular right now. Of course, the flip-flops are out, and many, many other things, bandanas and whatnot, that can be done with sublimation. So apparel is definitely expanding out, but it does have the limitation of sublimation will not work with cotton. Very important for you to understand that aspect. So sublimation can open the door to a wide range of products, applications, and markets. Here's just another sampling of different products that can be sublimated. And that's the beauty of sublimation, is the fact that there are so many different things that we can apply it to. A couple of questions here I'll jump on real quick. Does spun polyester have wicking capabilities? Yes, and it really always comes down to the manufacturer. When I say yes, it has it, did the manufacturer manufacture it that way? That's the question, okay? So that's just one of the things you check into, but if it is poly performance and spun polyester, then yes, it will have moisture wicking capabilities. How reliable is the polymer coating? Does it chip or peel? That depends on the manufacturer and the process that used. I will tell you that if you think about doing it yourself, it is fairly difficult to get the coating applied properly, so you get the right coverage and the right depth and the right consistency. But the manufacturers who have an established track record of manufacturing do a fantastic job of coatings. And coatings, while they could chip and peel, and I will tell you this, if you take and actually try to damage it, take a chisel and a hammer, you probably can do so. But I routinely take products that I've sublimated and drop them on the floor just to point out the fact of how well it holds up. What's the name of the polyester that feels like cotton? Spun polyester. Will sublimation work on lycra spandex material? Keep in mind that spandex is a brand name, okay, as a lot of things that we use just as routine or brand names. So when you're talking about lycra or spandex, you do have to verify what the content of the fiber is used in those, because some of those are blended fibers. If it's all polyester fibers, you're fine. If it's nylons in there, you have to be careful, because many nylons will melt up in that 400-degree range that we normally sublimate. I will tell you, with apparel, usually I do apparel sublimation around 380 degrees, 385, but still nylon doesn't like to be that high. Nylon likes to be in the low 300s. So to say, does it work on lycra spandex, you really have to look at the product that you're purchasing, find out the true fiber content of that so-called lycra spandex material, because a lot of that's used generically, and you just have to look into it. Are you saying spun polyester? Please spell it out loud. That's okay. Spun, S-P-U-N, spun. There we go. Question about the cost of dye sublimation. In reality, dye sublimation is less than a penny per square inch when we apply it. And with the new generation of Virtuoso printers, one of the printers, it's around half a penny per square inch, or the other one's 3/4 of a penny per square inch. So you can take an image, a full cover image that's say 8 by 10, and it's going to cost you 40 to 50 cents, to apply that. So the reality is that is actually cheaper than DTG ink for that same amount of coverage. So you can get a lot of coverage out of it. Okay, well, you guys have a lot of questions here. That's okay. I'm just taking them as they come. Sometimes I wait till the ends, but right now I'm just taking them as they come. Are there different types of heat transfer papers for darker shirts and lighter shirts? Yes, good question. I will tell you sublimation does not work with dark colors. There is no white ink for sublimation. Sublimation is typically applied to things that are lighter colors, and darkers are not going to work. Now, when you look at sublimation products like on the screen here, all those have been manufactured with a white area of where the sublimation goes. The only time that we really concern ourselves about dark products or colored products is when we're talking about apparel. You can sublimate a black shirt, you just cannot see it. So sublimation does not have white ink and will not work for darker colors. But if you're going to go with, say, pigment inks, okay, cotton-based inks, things like that, there are some different transfer papers. The reality is there's all kinds of transfers out there. Okay, and Pro World carries a tremendous selection of them because I've used their transfers that can allow you to do what you need to do. I mean, if sublimation is not the right thing for you, you need to take a look, call the staff there and talk to them about what you want to do. For example, they make plastisol transfers, and plastisol transfers are basically screen printed transfers, very easy to apply, and you can use those on dark colors. Okay, because it can actually have white ink incorporated into them. So there are good solutions, and Pro World's an excellent source to learn more about those different solutions just by, giving them a call and talk to them about what it is you need to do. Okay, I'm going to continue on. A lot of the other questions that are coming in to me will be actually covered here as we go through. So let's just continue on. And again, keep asking questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't answer them right away, just be patient. Okay, so let's go in and talk about profiting with sublimation. Gotta love that. Okay. But I'd just like to show you some concepts. Listen, I've been involved in the product decoration industry many years, okay? I started a business in my house, grew it out into something totally bigger than that. And the reality is I have a lot of experience in marketing and selling products, to people so I can make money, myself, right? So one of the things I learned along the way, this is very important, is when people get into pricing, I find that most people are underpriced, and people go after markets sometimes that are saturated. They give their stuff away. They complain that nobody wants to pay their price, and they don't always have a good concept of truly marketing, because people all day long will tell you it's too expensive. Doesn't mean they won't pay for it, but that's just how people are. They want to get the best price, right? But here's what I want you to always remember. Perception of value determines the profitability of the product. This is very true. I learned this so many times. It's only worth what someone will pay for it. If you can make them a believer of the value and they want or need that product, then they're going to pay for it. Okay, it's simple as that. If they don't believe it's worth what you're selling it for, then they're probably not going to buy it. So you have to focus on always showing people value just by being creative. Okay, so for example, look on the screen, you see a blank cell phone cover. Cell phone cover is one of the hottest products out there for sublimation right now. Blank boring has really almost no value to it. But what if we do something like this? We go and place someone's son on there, put in a little bit of text, and let me tell you, I can set that up like in less than a minute, okay? They give me their image they want on there, and we put a little bit of text, we're ready to go. Now that's worth a lot of money to the Hendricks family. May not be worth a lot of money to you and me because we don't know young Mr. Hendricks, but to the Hendricks family, that is worth a lot of money. And this is the way it goes back to about putting pictures on things, especially if we're talking about personalized products. A picture adds a tremendous amount of value. A picture tells a story. In this case, a picture captured a moment in time, preserved it forever. Now we have something people are willing to pay more money for because it has an emotional connection. If you just put the person's name on there, it would not have the same perceived value as having that particular picture. Now, what can you sell it for? Well, that particular phone cover there was $3.25. Using the penny per square inch calculation, that's the easiest way, penny per square inch, because it's easy math. But on a square inch basis, that's 13 cents is what it costs to print that. Now, I want to point out where I said ink and paper. Okay, I did this on a square inch basis. The reality is a single sheet of paper for sublimation, that's 8.5 by 11, is around 20 cents. So if you only printed one phone cover in the middle of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, then you might as well add 20 cents in there too, okay? And then it would be 33 cents instead of 13 cents. But if you're just doing a pure square inch, it's about 13 cents, you know, paper and ink, okay, is what it comes out to. So I just want to point that out because normally when we do sublimation, we try to print out multiple items on one sheet of paper to get the paper cost down, okay, to make better use of that particular paper. So whether you say it's 13 cents or 33 cents, it's not going to hurt your profit one way or the other, okay? Just trying to be a little accurate there. Right here we put in $2 for labor and overhead, and the total cost to produce it was about $5.38. Now, what is it that you can sell it for? Depends how good you are at selling, okay? We did some surveying, and we found the top end of a personalized phone cover was $35. Okay. Now I hate to even tell you the bottom end because people get really crazy and they go online. They want the cheapest one and they want to sell it for some ridiculous number like $9. Okay. But the reality, personalized products, top end $35. That gave you a margin of $29.62. If you really can't get 35, you got 25, you get a margin of $19.62. And when we look at how long it took to produce, that's pretty darn good. Okay. Reality is I went into Walmart and saw that they had phone covers, personalized phone covers available that you could order, and they were charging, I think it was $28.95. So if Walmart can charge $28.95, I can charge more. That's the neat thing about it, because whatever Walmart charges, charge more, because no one expects you to be cheaper than Walmart. You know, as I say, they're the low price leader, all right. They set the bar on low price. So, you know, again, in the personalization market, we could do that. Now, if this happened to be a promotional product where a company wanted to buy, you know, 100 phone cases to give out, they're not going to pay you anywhere close to $35 because it's a different perception of value for them, okay? So that's the reality of, you really have to understand when you're doing your pricing is you really can have different pricing sheets for different markets is what it really comes down to, okay? It's just something to keep in mind. How long did that take to make? Printing time on that was actually about 15 seconds, but I put 1 minute. A substrate prep time, meaning that we're just got to get the phone cover, made it up with a paper, I put 1 minute. In the heat press, it's 1 minute. So total time was about 3 minutes, or 20 per hour if you never took a break, okay? So reality is it doesn't take that long to make. How much did the artwork do? The artwork for me was a minute. Okay, the reality is the printing and pressing for me is about 2 minutes, artwork's 1 minute, so 3.5 minutes, I can easily produce one. But I will tell you this, if the family members, they want to make phone covers for both sets of grandparents and both parents and sisters and brothers and all these other people, right? Maybe they're getting 6 of these, and I can actually print 6 out on one sheet of paper and then put them all together under the heat press at the same time. I don't have to have one at a time in the heat press. I can do as many as I can fit under there, so keep that in mind. A couple of people are asking about being able to watch or hear the webinar later. A video is being made of this, and it will be available on the Pro World website probably later in the week. So you can, if you do have to check out early, you can always come back and watch it later. All right, so let's continue on here. Big believer in that perception of value. I base everything I do off of that, okay? So sublimation production, what does it look like? Okay, I gave you the chemistry of it. I'm just going to show you real quick what it takes to do something here. We call it a 3-step process: create, print, and press. We're going to set it up on a computer using any graphics program for that matter, though I'm going to show you one that's really cool, that's free, that's included with your system. Then you're going to print it out with sublimation inks and an inkjet printer that can handle sublimation inks. And then finally, you're going to use some type of heat press, whether it's a flatbed, a mug press, or maybe even a 3D heat press to be able to apply things. So those are your 3 components that you have to use. So to create your image, you're going to create your image using standard graphics software, okay? That's one option. We highly recommend, you know, Photoshop and those types of programs, whatever. And some of them will have downloadable templates. So you're going to create your image, and then you're going to print your image out. And when you print the image, you're going to print it on a transfer paper, sublimation transfer paper. Here we're doing coasters, and we got 4 on one sheet. You can see the artwork is slightly larger than the coaster. We do that on purpose. We normally run our artwork out just past the edge, so it's easier to line things up. You'll see a little piece of tape here. This is heat tape, looks like Scotch tape. It's not, never confuse the two. So we're going to use tape on each side, and the idea is to hold this in place as we move it to the heat press, and you'll see why in just a minute. And with many products, you can also use a temporary spray adhesive as well. Now you see when I carry it over here to the heat press, it actually gets flipped over so that the paper is on top of those coasters, so we don't want them shifting. That's why we put the tape on there. Then we're going to put it into the heat press, in this case 400 degrees for 1 minute. All of that transfer takes place. We're going to open it up and immediately rip that paper off while it's hot and discard the paper. In this case, I ended up with 4 coasters. Now, production time, not including artwork setup, 2 to 3 minutes. For most applications, it's going to be the same. So the pieces we need to make all that happen. So let's talk about graphics a little bit more for just a minute. Sublimation graphics, we highly recommend you use one of these 4 programs if you're going to do graphics with a traditional graphics software package. Okay, CorelDRAW, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe Photoshop Elements are all very good. In the case of those, you would download a free driver color management tool that we offer for the sublimation systems to help make sure that the images print correctly in the right colors. It's called Power Driver. So no charge for that, and it'll integrate totally with these. Now, if you're using any one of those, you will have to find templates to help you set things up. Typically, the manufacturers have created templates for their different products to make it pretty easy. For example, if I was working on CorelDRAW doing that same coaster, I would download the template for the coaster. And the template that you see right here is blue and green. The blue represents the true area of the coaster, and the green is what we call the bleed area, because we normally do like a full background here and run it just larger, as you saw earlier in the production pictures, just larger than the actual coaster itself. So the green is telling me how much to stretch out my edges of my artwork, so I have that little overbleed. Okay. Now, if I'm using CorelDRAW, I download this in a CorelDRAW format. I take my artwork, I merge the 2 together or group the 2 together and use Power Clip, and it will actually crop and shape it to fit this particular template. If I'm using Photoshop, I can use the layers function either way. So typically when we're working with these programs, we start with our image and then we modify the image to fit the product. Now, we thought we could make that simpler at Sawgrass, so we created a program called Creative Studio. And with Creative Studio, we do it in the opposite order. We start with the product, and then we create the image to fit the product, because that's ultimately what you need to do. Creative Studio is available at no charge when you're buying one of the Virtuoso printers, which is the new generation of printers. It is an online-based program, and you can access it with multiple computers, multiple printers, anywhere in the world, whatever you want to do. Okay, you will have your own personal cloud that it's in, so that it is protected and others can access it. But we took most of the features that are important to sublimators and put them in there, and then we left out a lot of the other features that are really good features for a graphic artist, but aren't commonly used for sublimation. So we ended up with a very simple, easy-to-use workspace. That was our goal. We wanted people to be able to start doing sublimation graphics in minutes rather than in days or weeks. And it can take a long time to work through and learn some of those other programs. In fact, the average user of a professional graphics program, if they're not a graphic artist working daily as a graphic artist, they have very little knowledge of the entire system because they just don't have time to learn. So this is something we put together to make this easier. So when you're buying your system through ProWorld, you will be able to, as soon as you buy the system, you can download this and start using it at no charge if you want to do it. In fact, at the end of the webinar, I'll give you a link where you can go in and play with it yourself. It's a fully functional version of Creative Studio. You just cannot print with it because you don't have a printer yet, okay? So it doesn't have a print function, because part of it is it does have color management and a driver that interact with your sublimation printer. So you can't print to just any printer. It has to print to a sublimation printer, okay? But yeah, you can go play with it. I'll show it to you. It's pretty cool. I'll give you a little demo of how it works as we get towards the end, okay? All right, that brings us to the next part, printers. How are we going to print the image? The reality when we're talking about printers is that there are 2 startup printers available in the world of sublimation. These are the Virtuoso printers. The one on the left is the SG400. The one on the right is the SG800. These are desktop style printers. Very affordable printers, and you can get pricing and whatnot directly from Pro World on this. Now, the big difference on these is the sizing. And this is one of the most important questions you do have to ask. You know, what is it that you're going to produce? Because size is going to be limited to what the printer is capable of doing. Certainly the bigger one costs more money, but it has more versatility in what it can do. So let's take a little closer look at some of that. The SG400, which was the one on the left, is capable of 8.5 inch by 14 inch print media. In other words, it can handle paper right up to 8.5 by 14. Okay. Now you cannot print to the edge of the paper. Very few printers can go to the edge of the paper. So in reality, probably the largest image you can do is 7.5 by 13. That's probably what is the largest pure image you can do. The reality is a lot of times you're doing multiple small images. So this particular sheet of paper here is an 8.5 by 14. You can see I got 6 of those cell phone covers on there. Or if I was doing the coasters, I could get 6 of those on there as well. If I'm going to do apparel, you can see this is about the area that you could cover with that size printer. Now, for a lot of people, this size works fine, but I'm here to tell you if you're going to do much apparel work, you're going to find yourself very limited with that size. Largest paper, 8.5 by 14 that it can run through. Okay, but that is the SG400. It's a 4-color CMYK printer. It's fairly high speed, and it's less than a penny per square inch to print. It's about 3/4 of a penny per square inch for ink costs. The big brother is the SG800. The standard maximum media size is 11 by 17, but there's an optional bypass tray. And when you buy that option and add it on, you can go up to 13 by 19 print media. And you can do a lot with 13 by 19, okay? So you want to keep that part in mind. But, working with this printer, you can see I can double my output if I'm doing smaller units. I got 12 on this instead of 6 that you saw on the earlier one, and I got 12 of this. But here's the big part, too. Look how much more area I can cover on the shirt. A lot more area with this particular printer. So I'm not going to tell you which is the right one for you because I don't know what it is you want to do. I will tell you because I have a lot of apparel background. Apparel is the one that always gets my attention. I'm always going to go with bigger because it gives me more versatility for all the different size products or do wraparounds on the sides of shirts and things like that. I like bigger, okay? So it does give me more capabilities with that. Then you got to get a heat press. Now, I know some of you already have a heat press, and so your heat press may work fine for you, and actually it may not, because a lot of times we look at a heat press and we think, okay, it's just, they're all alike, right? They look alike. How can they be so different? There's a lot of difference. Sublimation is very peculiar about temperature and pressure, especially temperature. And a really good quality heat press will give you good, accurate numbers, and a so-so heat press may not. So time, temperature, and pressure are the 3 ingredients that are very important for sublimation. Now, when we go shopping, a lot of us go right to the clamshell. And the clamshell press is very popular mainly because it tends to have a lower price point. I'm not going to knock any clamshell presses, but I will tell you for sublimation that I feel like a clamshell is not the right way to go. And I'll show you more about that as we go through this. But do pay attention to the clamshell. You see it's hinged here in the back, so it opens kind of like the jaws of an alligator and then closes back with sort of a hinge kind of point right here. Okay, there's plenty of good ones out there, but I think for sublimation you need something a little bit more substantial, as we'll see. That would be the swing away press. Now in the swing away press, remember the first one you just opens up. The swing away, the top platen lifts straight up and then swings over to the side. Swings over to the side so it exposes the work area where you're preparing your products. Okay, I think that this is a much better way to go with sublimation. It will cost you more money, but the reality is when you're buying a good heat press, you're buying something that should last you many, many years. So you're making an investment in a product that can generate a lot of different things for you. You'll definitely get your value back out of it over time. Another press that's very interesting is called the drawer press. And the drawer press is similar to a swing away. With a true drawer press, what happens is the top platen goes up and the bottom one pulls out. Now, Stahl's makes a fusion press that Pro World carries, which is really nice heat press. And what it is the top is a swing away, and this also has a drawer on the bottom. So you can lift the top up and swing it away, or you can lift the top up and pull the drawer out. You go either way. So that's an excellent heat press. And it's definitely a good quality. It's going to stand up for many, many years. There's a well-known company, Stahl's, behind it, who just takes great care of their products, makes great products. It's definitely something to consider. I mean, even when you're paying $2,000 or a little more for a good quality heat press, if you compare it to something like going into embroidery where you're talking about 10 to 12,000, you know, that's nothing. And here's the thing, is if you buy the wrong press or you buy a bad press, you're probably going to have to replace it anyway. Now, a couple of things here is very important. I'm going to give you something a little bit closer for you to understand. Sublimation requires equal and consistent pressure across the entire surface of the substrate. So if we place something on the lower platen, we need, you know, the lower platen is normally not heated, the top platen is. The bottom platen is just supporting while the top platen is pressing down with the heat. But you're still going to have, when you press it down, you're having pressure from all sides. Now, you're putting an image on the top, so that's where you really want consistency, but if it's inconsistent on the bottom, it's inconsistent on the top. So anyway. That's important, okay? And if we have uneven pressure, we have uneven imaging. Keep that thought in mind. So now let's go back and look at a comparison. Now, this is sort of a sideways view, and maybe I exaggerated a little bit, but I want you to see that with the clamshell, if I put something thick, and we do a lot of thicker things with sublimation, okay? We do wooden plaques, we do acrylic plaques. These kind of things are thicker, and if you put something thick into this basic clamshell, when it closes down, you'll get more pressure on one side than you will the other, and it will affect your imaging. When you go with the swing away or the drawer style or the fusion style, you always get consistent because the top one goes straight up and down instead of coming in at an angle. And that's important when you go to thicker materials. If all you ever do is thin stuff, then clamshell will be fine. But as soon as you go to thicker stuff, you're going to find out that you're going to need a swing away or some format similar to that. Now, the other thing too, talking about good heat presses versus bad heat presses, you know, I'm a big proponent of going out and finding a reliable manufacturer, good quality warranty, a tech support department, all those things. When we start talking about the heat, we have heating elements inside. Think of this as the top platen, okay? And I'm lying down my heat press looking straight up, and that's my heat platen, okay? It has heating elements inside. Now, some of the low-cost ones have multiple heat strips, and those heat strips may start to fail over time. And if you have failing heat strips, you get what we call cold spots. In other words, you have uneven heating across the surface. The better quality ones typically have a continuous heat strip that kind of zigzags through all the way. And if it goes out, the whole thing goes out. And there's no question. I mean, you either have the correct heat or you have no heat. So that, you know, the better quality ones, the heat elements are better elements, and they're spaced better, and they're more reliable, okay? And that way we got a consistent temperature. If you have inconsistent temperature across that platen, you will get inconsistent temperature across your sublimation, which means inconsistent imaging, okay? Not good. Sublimation needs accurate heat and pressure. Now, one of the things I've noticed with heat presses is naturally along the edges the temperature starts to fall off. And why is that? It's very simple, because the outer edges, you have room temperature all around the outer edges. If you're on the inside area, you have more heat around any given point. So it's logical the outer edges are bleeding off some heat. My general rule of thumb for a good quality heat press is you might be losing about a 1-inch boundary around where the temperature starts to drop off. We're not talking about 50 degrees or something, but once you move past a 10-degree swing with sublimation, you can start affecting the image quality pretty clearly. So for that reason, you always want to buy a heat press that's a little bit larger than the largest image you can sublimate with your printer, okay? So that's an important consideration. Now, if you're buying one of these cheap no-name presses, you're probably losing about a 2-inch boundary all the way around, you know, and that's a lot to lose because it's just the construction methodology. Go with the best that you can. It's a business investment, okay? You do not want to be worrying about a heat press. You want to be worrying about delivering products, collecting payment, and making new sales. Other presses are out there. There are cap presses available for headwear sublimation. There's mug and water bottle presses. And there's also we call wraps. And wraps are kind of cool because with a wrap, you can see here with a mug, we're printing sublimation onto a small sheet of paper here that wraps around the mug. Then we wrap this wrap all the way around, and it's going to hold the paper up against the mug. And then when you join it here, you actually got a latch which you tighten down to lock everything and hold it in place. And then you put it in a convection oven, not a microwave, a convection oven. Now this could take 12 to 15 minutes to sublimate, but you could put as many mugs in there as you could fit. So you could actually do multiple mugs at the same time. And wraps are available for other things besides mugs, like you saw the pet food bowl in one of the pictures. So when you do larger products like that, there's wraps for that too. They come in different sizes. So it's a pretty cool kind of thing that you can do there, okay? All right, so where that brings me is to sort of a transition, okay? Because I want to go off PowerPoint and I want to show you a couple of things, all right? So just in reminding again, create, print, press. So we have to have some type of graphics. We have to have a printer and inks, obviously. We have to have a good quality heat press, and then blanks. And we can buy pretty much all of that through Pro World. Now, just make a note here real quick while I'm on this. I'm going to go off onto the internet here in just a minute to show you some things. So like I want to show you Creative Studio. If you have questions afterwards, if we can't get to your questions or there's questions later, just jot these down. These are two resources you can go to ask questions, okay? So jot that down real quick because I'm getting ready to make that screen disappear while I go to a different screen. So give me just a minute to make all that happen. Sorry, this ends tomorrow. There is a promotion going on that I just wanted to share with you because if you need time to figure it out, I understand that, okay? But the reality is if you are actually ready to purchase, there is a promotion going right now, and that particular promotion does end tomorrow, but it could save you up to $226 if you're buying into one of the Virtuoso systems. I mean, it includes, when you buy in, you're buying the printer, you're getting your inks, you're getting papers, and you're getting Creative Studio, which if you decide not to use Creative Studio, it comes with it at no charge. It's yours. It's your choice of whether you're going to use it or not. If you'd rather use one of the traditional graphics programs, you certainly can, okay? So I want you to be aware of that. So if you're looking to buy, then you want to make sure that you mention that to Pro World, that you are interested in taking advantage of the summer savings promotion, which ends on June 30th. So I'm sorry it ends on June 30th, but I did want to share it with you because you should be aware that that is there, right? All right. So now what I'll do is I want to show you a little bit of Creative Studio real quick, because I was talking about Creative Studio, and it's a really cool program. It is online based, and we did that for a lot of different reasons. But part of it is it makes it so that it will interface with PC, with Mac, with Android, with iOS, anything, okay? Anything out there pretty much that can go online can use Creative Studio, okay? So let me just make something for you real quick, okay? When we're in Creative Studio, when you first open it, the first thing it does is go to Product Wizard. And Product Wizard is asking you what you want to design. And the reality is when we're going to design is we have real products here. These are real products. The part numbers are actually with them, okay? So you're using real products, not imaginary examples, all right? So what I'm going to do real quick is I want to do a license plate. So I'm going to look down here for license and action plates. There we go. And now it's going to give me a complete list of different ones. And I'm going to use this one right here. It's manufactured by a company called Unisub, and it's their 5656. The next thing is it asks me to select a color. This one's only available in white, so we're going to stick with it. It doesn't matter because we're going to change the color of it as we go. And then it's saying, hey, do you want to use different size papers? Gives you some choices. We're going to use legal paper in a horizontal format. So start designer, and what it does is it brings onto the screen the actual template for that license plate. Now, the neat thing about Creative Studio is we put a lot of other tools in there besides just that, because there's a lot of people in the world who are not artists like myself, and therefore we included thousands of different stock images and design elements to help you try to become a graphic artist. But one of the cool things is art templates, and the art templates are like pre-made templates with a theme where you can change some of the different elements as you need it to be able to work for your particular project. All right, so I'm going to start right off with templates. I mean, I just think that's the way that I want to go, and instead of trying to build it from scratch. And with this, I'm going to go down and choose, let's try mascots. And on mascots, see all these things, it's all included in there. I'm going to go with this one because it's kind of rectangular and would fit really well for the license plate. So I'm going to bring it in, and there you can see. Now, the neat thing here is this particular artwork, see how it fits the template? I mean, if you make it bigger than the template, it cuts it off. That's what I'm talking about, the sizing, okay? Now, this particular template, if you look at it, and most any template, see the gray area there, the little gray area all the way around? That's where we want you to extend your artwork, or at least the background of your artwork, into that gray zone. That gray zone will print, but what will end up on the license plate is only what's in the white zone. So by the same token, let's make sure that the M in Mavericks is not in the gray zone, because that could be a problem. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce that down. So you see just sort of that click and drag is easy to do. Every particular template is made up of objects. That's where our object list is over here on the right-hand side. And if we can click on an object, then we can do something with it. For example, I'm going to click here on the bull. And because I can grab him by himself, see, I can move him around. I can delete him. I can resize him. I can even recolor him, okay? Maybe I want to make him orange instead for some reason. So I chose a color and recolor him. So it gives you a lot of different capabilities there. If maybe this is a football team, you see I selected the basketball lettering, and I'm going to come over here and change basketball to football. So I'll click football and click OK. And it changed the lettering, or it will. If I didn't like that lettering, I could change the fonts. And so there's lots of things you can do. I'm just trying to keep this simple for you. But it's very intuitive. I mean, you just click on things and, you know, maybe make some changes to them. One of the things that I always do with something like this that I think really enhances it, and it shows you some of the features. It also shows you some tips and tricks with sublimation. When you do something like a white license plate with, you know, a graphic, it's kind of boring. It looks like a white license plate with a graphic, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an image into the background to make it look a little more interesting, okay? So I'm going to click on image. Now image takes me into the stock design library. Okay, templates took me into art templates. This is the stock design library. So what I want to do is I want to do a background. I'm going to go to the photo textures, and I'm going to choose this one here, which is pretty cool because I live in an area where people like to trick out their big four-wheel drive trucks, and a lot of times they're using, you know, metal like you see here. Now that's obviously not big enough, so I want to fill up the whole area. So I went ahead and just stretched it to where it filled in the whole area. And now you're saying, well, gee, now we can't see the graphic. Oh, that's not a problem. It built this in layers. All I need to do is change the organization of the layers. So I'm just going to move this one down and get all my other pieces back on top of that background. Now the neat thing about this, when we go to sublimate it, that plastic license plate actually is going to look metallic when it comes out. Until you touch it, you won't know it's not metallic. Well, what I did was I made it more interesting with that particular background, and by changing that particular background, I've enhanced the value of it, okay? And, you know, if I want to use that background, I can easily change it to another one, and we'll use another one that's very popular with the four-wheel drive people is this particular metal background, which, there it goes. So lots of different cool things we can do with that. Once we're ready to print it, we can go and print it, okay? And we can save it. I mean, there's lots of different things we can do with it. So in a nutshell, that's what Creative Studio, just a quick intro to it. Now, I told you that we do have a free online demo where, this is, by the way, free when you buy your system anyway, but if you want to play with this, you haven't bought a system, but you want to learn more about Creative Studio, here's what you do. Is you go to this location right here, which is www.sawgrassinc.com/creative studio demo. Okay, see that across my screen? sawgrassinc.com/creative studio demo. Hit enter, and what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to fill in a little form, and then it'll give you access into this so you can kind of go play with it all that you want. Okay, read all the little information there because it tells you about setting up a few things, but the reality, that's what you do. Pretty easy, pretty simple to get into it. Definitely something to take a look at. Okay. All right. So let's see about some more questions there. And I'm going to bring Danielle back too. She's been hanging out in the background. So I'm going to set it up so she can join us too. So Danielle, you still with us?
I'm still here.
Excellent. So a lot of information there, a lot of good questions. I got a few more here to look at. Yeah, we got a good feedback here. It says the right or wrong heat press can make or break you. Yeah, there's a lot to that, especially with sublimation. A lot of other processes, a basic heat press works just fine, but sublimation, you really want to invest in the right one. Is it true that you need to sublimate something every day or the ink can dry in the cartridge and you have to clean them out? Okay, what you're talking about is ink clogging heads. And the reality is, no matter what kind of printer you use, if you don't use it routinely, the inks themselves may separate, dry out, or whatnot, and cause some clogging in the heads, which can cause some imaging problems. With the Virtuoso printers, the SG400 and 800, as long as you leave them turned on, plugged in, turned on, they will run self-maintenance program, which will keep some ink flowing through them. Now that does use a little bit of ink, but it also keeps your heads clean as well. But if you're printing routinely, you don't have to worry about head maintenance, because ink's flowing through it. But it is important to always have that. That's the neat thing about these printers. If you bought printers several years ago, they didn't have that type of program. You had to remember to go over to it and manually do head cleanings routinely, or you could have some issues of that nature. Okay, additional questions. Let's see. What's the best sublimation paper for apparel? I currently have text print R. Stick with the paper that you have. We could go into a long discussion on color management, which we're not going to, but changing papers can affect the colors of your images slightly, not huge. Stick with one paper. Whatever you're using, stick with it. Text print R will work for anything you want to sublimate. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there because we are just past the top of the hour, but I want to thank everybody for coming out and all your great questions, and feel free to contact me or definitely call the staff at Pro World if you have additional questions. Danielle, I'll turn it back over to you. If there's anything else you want to add, feel free to do so.
No, I think that pretty much says it all. Thank you, Jimmy, for hosting today. And, again, if you have any questions, just feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to help you.